We'll call the meeting to order of the Board of Supervisors business meeting Tuesday, June 19, 2018, 7 p.m. Pittsylvania County General District Courtroom, Edwin R. Shields Courthouse, Edition 11 Bank Street, Chatham, Virginia. Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Here.
Mr. Blackstock?
Present.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Farmer?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Scares?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here. Before we start the meeting really tonight, I want to disclose to the public that we are not our IT folks and not any of our people, but the software provider for our meetings is having some engineering problems. So intermittently, you will probably see the system go down. We'll bring it back up, but we will be working through those as we go. Caitlin is doing a great job, but she'll be doing two tasks today. She'll be trying to run the IT part of it, and she'll be trying to do shorthand enough to keep up with the minutes. So we apologize for that in advance, but that's beyond our control. Technology is wonderful when it works, and aggravating when it doesn't. So I'd ask that you to observe a moment of silence with me, please. Thank you. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gentlemen, are the items to be added to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we add 3 additional items to the business meeting agenda. Number 1 would be library board appointment under appointments. Number 2, matters from the work session. Approval of second amendment to animal shelter operational agreement and lease. And number 3, approval of retention of outside legal counsel for opioid litigation damages assessment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Scares. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. I missed it. Sorry. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. Can I get an approval of the agenda with the added items? A motion.
So, second.
Motion made by Mr. Scares, seconded by Mr. Barber. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to consent agenda. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented in the board packet.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Scares. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
And Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We have the pleasure of having Mr. Tyler Jarrett in attendance tonight, and we have a presentation for him, so I ask the board to go down with me, and Mr. Barber is going to make the presentation and read.
family.
Bring your family with you, Mr. Garrett.
Squeeze around that way. I'd like to present this resolution to Tyler Jarrett. Whereas Tyler Jarrett is a 17-year-old male who lives in Pittsylvania County, and whereas Tyler Jarrett, son of Robert and Connie Jarrett, is a student at Tunstall High School, and whereas while at Tunstall High School, Jarrett plays baseball under Coach Barry Shelton, and whereas Jarrett was named All-Metro in 2016, All-Piedmont District in 2016 and 2018, and whereas Jarrett was selected to the West Commonwealth All-Star Team in 2016, 2017, and whereas Jarrett was named to the All-Conference 30 in 2017, and whereas Jarrett has earned his 4-year letterman and starter on the varsity baseball team and is a 2018 varsity baseball team captain, and whereas Jarrett has signed with Cornell University to play baseball and was recently named to the Athletic of the Year in the Group 3 division in the state of Virginia that includes all of the Virginia high school leagues, and whereas Jarrett has performed admirably throughout his baseball career, bringing recognition not only to himself but to his family, school, and Pittsylvania County, then be it resolved that the Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors expresses its congratulations and admiration to Tyler Jarrett on becoming the Athlete of the Year for the state of Virginia, and be it further resolved that a copy of this proclamation be presented to Tyler Jarrett and made part of the county's permanent record. Given under my hand this 19th day of June 2018, Robert W. Warren. Tyler, would like to congratulate you. Proud of you.
Thank you very much. Good job, good job.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Good luck. Thank you.
That brings us to the hearing of the presentations. You have any? Yes, sir. No, sir. Okay. We're down to hearing of citizens. Each person addressing the board on the hearing of citizens shall be a resident or landowner of the county or the registered agent of such resident or landowner. Each person shall step up, give his or her name and district in an audible tone of voice for the record. Unless further time is granted by the chairman, shall limit his or her address to 3 minutes. No person shall be permitted to address the board more than once during the hearing of citizens. All remarks should be addressed to the board as a body and not to any individual member thereof. Hearing of the citizens shall last for a maximum of 45 minutes. Any individual that is signed up to speak during said session who does not get the opportunity to do so because of the aforementioned time limit shall be given speaking priority at the next board meeting. Absent chairman's approval, no person shall be able to speak who is not signed up. First to sign up is Mr. Herbert Hudson.
Chairman, board, honorable citizens of Pittsylvania County. I'm here today to once again express my sincere disappointment in each of you. We have watched this county's finances spiral out of control. We have watched this board waste our dollars in investments that obviously have not paid off. I watched as millions were appropriated for projects that would create jobs immediately, and not one job did I see anywhere. Not one. Where is my money going? My money, okay? You levy more taxes. You increase our fees. And yet we're standing in the same place today we were a year ago. Some of you were here and some of you were not. But the time has come for things to change. Your people, your constituents, the people you work for, who you seem to have forgotten, are the ones who are angry. So the time has come for you to actually make a difference in what you do. You have shown complete and total disregard for the people you work for, and that is sad. This is a democracy. You say the Pledge of Allegiance, mean it. Do what you're supposed to do and support the people for whom you work. Where is this county today? Is it in better financial shape because we've cut everything? Is it in better financial shape because we've raised our taxes? Stop kicking the can are the verbiage that I heard. Well, the can is stop kicking and you're still spending money. We're tired of the way you waste our dollars and the decisions you make. You embarrass us with your public investigations, and it's sad. It is truly sad to watch. If this situation cannot change, then you guys need to change. All of you should line up and resign if you can't do a better job than you're doing right now. You talk about spending money wisely. You talk about how the Tea Party is a great thing. I don't want to hear it anymore. Do what you said you were going to do. If you can't change the things that you're doing now and keep running this autocratic system of government that you have done, change it immediately. Or I bought you a shirt. I bought one for each of you. It says, I'm the picture of incompetence, Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors. And since we can't freely think for ourselves on how we need to vote, because everything's a 7-0 vote, maybe you should just ask Mr. Smitherman how you should vote, because that's exactly how it looks to everybody else that you work for. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. You can have these if you want.
Next up is Charles Edwin.
How you doing, Mr. Chairman, and all of y'all? My name's Charles Eaton. I live at 201 Buckview Lane, Dry Fork, Virginia, which y'all know that's off Whitetail Meadows. The man shaking his head already. Last month we was here discussing our road. All right, we've been playing this game for 20 years, and now all the rules have changed. We can't keep playing the game like this. We are taxpayers, just like everybody sitting in this courtroom. And the road we drive on is a disgrace for the county. Now, I asked Mr. Barber and even Mr. Davis over there, he was talking, and I asked both of them and all y'all, come travel down that road and take a look for yourself. Well, that didn't happen. VDOT was supposed to come down there. Well, I heard they came down through there, but I didn't see them. So what I'm here tonight is, what did y'all conclude? And Mr. Barber, I personally asked you to come down that road because you're over our district. Is it that you don't have the time to come down that road, or you don't want to take your vehicle? If you don't want to take your vehicle down the road, call me. I'll be more than glad to come up there and pick you up in my truck.
You gotta address the full board, you can't address.
Oh, okay. Well, if we need a solution on this, and if I can't get it here, I will go to Senator Bill Stanley, and I'll write a letter to Congressman Garrett. I will do that. I am called up there on Whitetail, excuse my language, stir. And I do it well, and I'm proud of it, but it still ain't getting nothing done. I know everybody has their own district, their own problems, but we've got a major one up there that needs to be looked at and come up with a solution that can help us. It's a 911 calling area. Any emergency vehicle, seconds for somebody's life. Now, I live on Buckview, not all the way at the end. When we're only talking 9/10 of a mile, and it takes me 23 minutes from my house to the top of the road, the 41. Holes are that deep in the road. And we can't go over no more, or we're gonna be down in the woods. So, I mean, you know, we need to do something. Y'all need to come to a conclusion of what we're gonna do. We was on that 20-year deal thing, and the rules changed. So where are we left at? Y'all responsible for the signs, the road signs. Why can't y'all come and be responsible for the road? Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the folks that signed up for hearing of the citizens. We're down to public hearing, rezoning, public hearings pursuant to Article 5, Division 6 of the Pittsylvania County zoning ordinance. The Board of Supervisors have been empowered to hear and decide specific zoning issues and zoning map changes in support of said ordinance. In accomplishing this important task, the Board is responsible for promoting the health, safety, and general public welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County. The Board must ensure that all its decisions and regulations be directed to these goals and that each be consistent with the environment, the comprehensive plan, and the best interest of Pittsylvania County, its citizens, and its prosperity. I will open public hearing case number 1 at 7:16. Mr. Sides.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Case 1, R-18-010. Danny and Juanita Hilton have petitioned to rezone .98 of an acre located on State Road 703, Wilkerson Road, in the Dan River Election District from A1 Agricultural District to R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District in order to combine with the adjacent parcel of land which is already zoned R1. Once the property is rezoned to R1, then all uses listed under Section 35-222 are permitted use. The Planning Commission, with no opposition, recommended granting the petitioner's request by unanimous vote. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hilton is here to represent the petition.
Mr. Hilton, do you have anything to add, sir? Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Hilton or Mr. Sides? Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make the recommendation on rezoning case of R-18-010. Pardon me for one moment, my computer just zapped out there.
Let me close the public hearing at 7:18 and let him know.
Okay, I thought you said what's the pleasure of the
Oh,
board.
I did. I messed up. Now you're up.
Okay, you just gonna have to hold on a moment. Let's see if I can get this right. About ready for another breakout there. Mr. Sides, so moved on what he just requested. Thank you very much.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Davis to approve the change, seconded by Mr. Scares. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, that's from A1 to R1.
Thank you, sir. Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Here. President, sorry.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to case number 2, and I will open that public hearing at 7:19.
Yes, sir. In case R-18-011, David and Diane Miller have petitioned to rezone 14.70 acres located on State Road 649, Bockley's Mill Road, in the Chatham Blair's Election District from RC1 Residential Combined Subdivision District to A1 Agricultural District for a private recreational facility. Once the property is rezoned to A1, then all uses listed under Section 35-178 are permitted use. The Planning Commission, with no opposition, recommended granting the petitioner's request. Staff summary is enclosed in your packet, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chuck Esky is here to represent the petition.
Mr. Esky, do you have anything to add, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Sides or Mr. Esky? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing at 7:20. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, in case R-18-011, I move that we rezone from RC1 to A1 14.7 acres located on State Road 649 and Motley Mill Road in the Chatham Blair's District.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to case 3, public hearing rezoning case number R18012. I'll open the public hearing at 7:21. Mr. Sides.
Case R-18-012, Bradley Boswell has petitioned to rezone 1 acre located off State Road 40, East Gretna Road, in the Callis-Gretna election district from R1 Residential Suburban Subdivision District to RC1 Residential Combined Subdivision District to allow for placement of a second dwelling, a single-wide mobile home for a family member. Once the property is rezoned to RC1, all uses listed under section 35-267 are permitted use. The Planning Commission, with no opposition, recommended granting the petitioner's request. Staff summary is in your packet, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Boswell is here to represent the petition.
Mr. Boswell, you have anything to add, sir? No, sir. Okay. Once again, no one signed up to speak to the issue, so I'll close the public hearing at 7:22. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we rezone case R-18-012 from residential suburban subdivision district to RC1 residential combined subdivision district.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Farmer, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Kenny.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. That concludes the rezoning public hearings. We're now down to other public hearings. Each person addressing the board under a public hearing shall step up, give his or her name and district and his or her place of residency for non-county citizens in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless further time is granted by the chairman, shall be limit his or her address to 3 minutes. Speakers for a group shall be limited to 10 minutes. Speakers shall conclude their remarks at that time unless the consent of the board is affirmatively given to extend the speaker allotted time. Absent chairman's approval, no person should be able to speak who is not signed up. We will open the first public hearing, proposed amendment to Chapter 6-63, property exemption by classification and designation of the Pittsylvania County Code at 7:23. Mr. Hunt.
Yes, Climax Ruritan Club, 501c3 charitable organization, is seeking property real estate tax exemption for parcel number 1498-45-0027. The Honorable Shirley Hammock has submitted the loss of tax revenue to the county as $249.86 annually. This type of tax exemption is allowed by Section 58.13651 of the Virginia Code and our local ordinance. The public hearing tonight is for anyone to comment on this proposed action before the board takes action on this. This has been duly advertised in the appropriate newspaper for this public hearing.
Okay. We had no citizens signed up, so I'll close the public hearing at 7:24. Any questions from the board to Mr. Hunt? Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Climax Ruritan Club tax exemption application.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Scares, seconded by Mr. Farmer. Any discussion on the motion?
Just a quick question now that we have on the floor. Mr. Hunt, you reviewed the application and they meet all the requirements?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Just for clarification, Mr. Hunt, we have some other Ruritan clubs that have this status already?
We do, and if you look at, I don't have the section in front of me, look at our county code, which is online, we list every entity in the county that has gotten these tax exemptions, so you can take a walk down memory lane and see who's gotten exemptions.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scares,
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes. Public hearing item number 2, proposed amendment to chapter 6.6-3, property exempt by classification and designation of the Pittsylvania County Code. Mr. Hunt.
Yes, this is a similar public hearing. This is from the Blue and Gray Education Society, and they are seeking tax exemption for a parcel of land and business furniture and office equipment. The total projected tax revenue loss, according to Ms. Hammock, is $770.78. I have reviewed and everything looks in order. In fact, they submitted a tax exemption last year for a similar parcel of land. This has been properly advertised.
Okay, I'll open that public hearing at 7:26. And no one signed up for comments on that, so I close the public hearing at 7:27. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the request for the tax exemption for the Blue and Gray Education Society.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Farmer, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scares,
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
And Chairman, I'll just add, for the first time, I think ever, it's been on the form for a while, we actually are now requiring the people seeking the tax exemption to pay for the ads in the newspaper. We have eaten that cost in the past, and that has stopped going forward, and I applaud the deputy clerk for instituting that change that's been long needed.
Are there any unfinished business that you're aware of, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're down to new business, purchase of service weapon. Mr. Taylor, Sheriff Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. In December, at the end of December, Mike Hill, our school resource officer, retired on an unrelated service injury. And since that time, he has inquired about purchasing his duty weapon. And the Code of Virginia allows that if that officer does request that, but it also requires that he pay the fair market value of that service weapon. In contrast to if he retired on a service injury, that weapon would be provided to him at no cost, or $1, I'm sorry, $1. So we were requesting of the board that they approve this request.
Thank you, Sheriff. What's your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve the request. I do have a question.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Barber. Open the floor for discussion.
Sheriff, since he's not retiring, he is going to be required to pay the cost, actual cost of the value of the weapon.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scares,
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes. Thank you. Appropriations, next item 12B is appropriation of funds. Sheriff Taylor.
Yes. As required by law, anytime we obligate asset forfeiture funds, we first have to appropriate it. The board has to appropriate that. Each year, that's a normal course of business, and we've asked this year to appropriate $75,000 in the construction line and police supply line under the federal asset forfeiture program that we have.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to appropriate $100,000 from the federal asset forfeiture checking account,
I think you asked for more money than
$25,000 to police supplies, and $75,000 of that money to construction.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Dr. Miller. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think probably got, just so the public understands, this is money that was seized, or funds that were seized and are in a special account that cannot be spent specific ways that the federal government allows the sheriff's office to spend.
That's correct.
And so it's not, it's money, because it's all taxpayer money, because taxpayer employees were used to help seize it. But it can only be spent specific ways. The $75,000, can you just give us a general idea of what we do with construction? I
Yes,
mean,
and actually, that was 100,000, my mistake.
Okay.
But I think you've already voted on it.
You only gonna get 75.
We haven't voted yet, we just made a motion.
You gonna use the rusty nails.
Yeah, so the building that we purchased, the Hancock property, some of that space is garage-style space, and we want to retrofit that into office space.
Do we need to amend the motion to say $100,000? What do we need?
I thought you said 25 and 75. which is 100.
You read it correctly. The motion's on page 192 of your packet. You read it correctly. The sheriff was just forgot that he had more expensive taste than
Be
he.
kind.
This is a first for him to
I don't,
ask for a lower amount.
I didn't mean to publicly correct the sheriff.
We made history tonight. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scares.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Sheriff. Oh, by the way, congratulations being on the press release recently.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much. Great job. New business 12C, 911 road name additional request. Mr. Stanton.
Sheriff doesn't want to use all that money, I've got me forward for that. I'm here to, on behalf of Miss Sandra Adams, who has a property off of R&L Smith Road, and she has a rather lengthy driveway off that road that she will eventually be building a home. And she's asked to, she wants to name the driveway, give it its own street name. She wants to name it Violet Lenora Way, and that requires action by the board to be able to do that.
Any questions for Mr. Stanton? Okay. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion this request be granted.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Barber, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scares.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes. We're down to 12D, Cherrystone Creek Dam. Mr. Hicks.
Good evening. My iPad keeps going in and out, so I'll try to keep it going as we can. Or use this right, it doesn't matter. Back a couple months ago, we brought you some information on the Cherrystone Lake, and you took action. I met that evening, and the federal agency has completed a economic analysis on the Cherrystone Creek Dam 2A project, which is actually Roaring Fork Lake, which is a smaller lake, and basically came to the same conclusion that if you spend $8, you don't get about $1 of benefit. And my recommendation to you this evening is the same that it was on the Cherrystone project 1A, and let me find it again right here right quick. And my recommendation is that the Board of Supervisors choose alternate 1A above, which is to do nothing or accept the potential flood risk for flood events greater than the elevation of the crest of the auxiliary spillway, and to develop a setback ordinance preventing further development below the crest of the auxiliary spillway, which is the same recommendation we gave you on the First Lake project. Let's try and answer any questions you might have.
Questions, Mr. Hicks?
I know when we discussed this originally, there is some houses that are in the floodplain now. How many are there, Mr. Hicks? Do you remember?
I think we currently have 2 houses that would either have to be elevated or some type of, flood prevention action would have to be taken if you move forward on these construction projects. But those 2 houses were in the First Lake. We got the Cherry Stone Lake.
And those homes have been there for a long time, haven't they?
Yes, sir, they've been there for years.
What's pleasure?
I make a motion to accept alternative 1 for the Cherry Stone Creek Dam number 2A Roaring Fork Lake, which is to do nothing, except the potential flood risk for flood events greater than the elevation of the crest of the auxiliary spillway, and do hereby further instruct staff to develop a setback ordinance preventing further development below the top of the dam elevation for Cherry Stone Creek Dam Project 1 Cherry Stone Lake and Cherry Stone Creek Dam number 2A Roaring Fork Lake.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Farmer. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to award of radio tower construction bids. Mr. Hicks.
Back last year, the board authorized the borrowing of additional funds to build 2 additional radio tower sites. One of the sites, it would be at the Tunstall Fire Department, and the second one would be the Mayfield Road Tower site. We took bids on that project, and as you can see here, the bids were in excess of $1,046,000, which was a significant problem for us because our construction budget was $735,000. We met with the bidder on the project Black and Beach, and we explored several different options, and basically we asked them to come back with their best and final offer, asking them to make modifications to the project or look for ways to save costs. They came back with those options. Their final offer was $1,024,000, and of course that's still way over our budget. They included a second option, which would be to use smaller buildings at the tower sites, which brought the cost down to $937,000. And during that discussion, we discovered that at the landfill, we have 2 buildings that were removed from some of our tower sites previously. We've had a structural engineer look at those buildings, and we think they are suitable for this use and could be moved to these sites. Once we took those 2 buildings out of the proposed contract, which would be option 3, we brought the bids down to $683,000, and I lost it again.
Use this as a backup.
That brought the bid down to $683,000. That bid does not include 2 generators for the project, and it does not include the new HVAC units that we had to put in those 2 buildings. That leaves us $51,000 $792.85 from our current $735,000. And we feel like we can cover those costs for the 2 generators and the 2 HVAC units, and to have those 2 buildings moved to the site within that $51,000. So my recommendation at this time is to award the bid to Black & Beach in the amount of $683,990.07.
Any questions for Mr. Hicks?
Mr. Hicks, are you completely comfortable with some very large amount cut out of the original bid? And I guess what we're saying is those 2 buildings are worth $400,000.
They were very expensive buildings, and our staff has looked at the existing buildings we have. We, brought a structural engineer, and he thinks the buildings are okay. So it is a substantial savings using those 2 buildings we already had.
Welcome in staff.
They won't be new, they won't be like I think we feel fairly comfortable, that those 2 buildings will work.
I think a lot of the taxpayers in the county are kind of used to not always having something new.
Yeah.
And the structural engineer signed off on these
Yeah,
bids.
he came and looked at them Thursday of last week, and he's okay with it, so. But, by using those 2 buildings, that should save a major portion of the cost off, which, gets us back in the budget.
Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to award bid for the construction of 2 radio towers to Black & Beach as outlined in their best and final offer, option 3, with DC power systems included. I would assume that's included, said award being in the amount of $683,990.07.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Steers, second by Mr. Blackstock. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any?
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. Authorize, item 12F, authorized execution of solid waste engineering service contract.
As of June 30th, our current contract expires, which has been with Dewberry and Associates for at least over 20 years. We advertised for those services. We had 7 different firms, submit a proposal. After review by county staff, we selected 3 to gather additional information and interview. And that was Dewberry and SCS Engineering and Joyce Engineering. In those conversations, both Joyce Engineering and SCS expressed that they would be willing to assist us in the actual operations of the landfill. They have the expertise, they have the staff, they've been doing this for years and years and years. Dewberry has been doing it for many years now, but their emphasis was on compliance with our rules and regulations. We think operations is just as a key component as the environmental compliance. As I told you earlier this evening, we currently average about 1,040 pounds per cubic yard of waste. Let's see, most other landfills, they average about 1,500 to 1,700 pounds. That is a significant difference in the operation of our landfill. It would extend the life of phase 2, probably another 13 years. We'd have about 500 and some thousand tons we could add in that same space and everything. So after reviewing all that, our recommendation is that we contract with Choice Engineering Services for the solid waste engineering services at the landfill, and for SCS for solid waste engineering services for our convenience centers, which will be the compactor sites and the green box sites. And as you illustrated in your budget, we propose to move forward with 3 additional compactor sites. So if you award these bids, SCS would be working with the county on that portion of the project.
Any questions for Ms. Hicks? Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize the county administrator to execute contracts with Joyce Engineering Services for solid waste engineering services at the landfill and with SCS for solid waste engineering services for our convenience centers, compactor sites, and green box sites.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, second by Mr. Scares. Any discussion on the motion?
I had one mistake. I know it's some kind of, what is it, annual study we have to fill out on the landfill. Was Dewberry doing that, or is this new firm gonna do that?
Yes, sir, they did that for us for all these years. These new firms will do the same thing.
So they comfortable with doing it?
They know, they do
Pretty
that.
intensive.
Yes, sir, they've done this in a rather large number of other
Okay, I just
locations.
want to make sure.
I think they're both, very good engineering firms, and I think they would do well for us.
Is this something we just been reviewing every year for years, and we
Yes,
went out
sir.
to bid to see if we could save money or get more services?
Yes, sir.
Good job.
And just automatically renewed every year, so.
Okay, board's pleasure. Roll call. Okay.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to 12G, County School System Chatham Armory lease. Mr. Hicks.
We have a copy of the proposed lease in your agenda packet. Basically, it would be a $1 per year lease, and it would be renewable. As far as the maintenance and upkeep, the county, under the terms of the lease, would be responsible for the outside of the building, the roof, the landscaping, the lawn maintenance. The school system would be responsible for everything inside the water, the HVAC, their control system, everything inside the building, they would be responsible for. And as you can see already, they've already started working on they're in the process of installing, the plumbing, the HVAC and everything that needs to be in the building. So at this time, my recommendation is that the board authorize the execution of the lease.
Any questions? On the board. Mr. Hicks. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
recommend pass the recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Dr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Just for the public's information, the school system has had a small program that reached out to these children in need, and this will enable them to reach a larger number, and they have had a tremendous success rate, but they were limited in their space. And this is a very, very expensive item to the taxpayers of Pittsylvania County. We believe we will be able to service more children, and they have been able to get, I think the number was about 90 percentile back into the mainstream, and that's what we want for our children, is the best education they can get, and they've done a tremendous job, but they've just been limited in space. This is going to give them a better opportunity, and ultimately in the end too, it does the right thing for the children, which is the most important thing, does the right thing for our citizens, and it will ultimately, we believe, save tax dollars from the CSA standpoint. So I'm very excited about this opportunity to work with our school system in this endeavor. So,
As the inmates painted the inside of the building, so we want to thank the sheriff for allowing that to happen. Because that was a substantial cost savings in this project.
thank you. Working together, appreciate it. Roll call.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to item 13, appointments. 13A, DSS Board appointment, Ronald Merritt's. Board's pleasure.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion that we would appoint Donald Merrick's to the DSS board.
Second.
Second.
Motion made, who said the second? Motion made by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Barber. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. 13B, DSS appointment, Patricia Evans. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to appoint Ms. Patricia Evans to the Department of Social Services Board for a 4-year term starting on July 1st, 2018.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Scarce, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. 13C, reappointment Public Library Board of Trustees. Board's pleasure.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to reappoint Ms. Janice Fitz to the Public Library Board of Trustees.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Barber. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Kenny.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to 13D, reappointment Public Library Board of Trustees. Board's pleasure. Motion, do I have a motion?
Yes. Make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to appoint, or reappoint Portia Fitzgerald. Motion made by Dr. Miller, seconded by Supervisor Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to 13E, Public Library Board of Trustee appointment. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Mrs. Sandra Wrinkle to the Public Library Board of Trustees for a 4-year term.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Palmer. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. Down to 13F, Tourism Board appointment. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to appoint Ms. Mary Smith to the Tourism Board.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Farmer, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to
Mr.
13.
Chairman, I've got this is my-
We have a 13G.
We got 13G. I got it. Okay. 13G, library appointment. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion to appoint Ms. Shelby Buffington from the town of Gretna to the county's Public Library Board of Trustees for a 4-year term?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Palmer, seconded by Mr. Barber. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scarce?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes. We're down to 14 items from the work session.
Mr. Blackstock has the items.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, after the discussion held in the work session earlier today, under Pet Center lease amendment, I make a motion to approve the second amendment to the animal shelter operational agreement and lease.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Scarce. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Barber,
No.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scarce,
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
part of the closed session earlier today, I make a motion to retain Kaufman and Canol's and Sanford, Hessler Sharp as outside legal counsel to conduct an opioid epidemic cost recovery damages assessment at no cost to the county for potential use in future opioid litigation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Scarce, seconded by Dr. Farmer. Any discussion on the motion? Miller, I'm sorry. Sorry, Dr. Miller.
You've been promoted to a doctor.
It's honorary. It's up. Sorry, Dr. Miller. Roll call.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Farmer,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Scarce,
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes. Before we move on to item 15, I'd like to remind the citizens, I know these things come up and we make motions, we don't see a lot of discussion. That's because during that work session at 4:30 till 7 o'clock, a lot of these items have been discussed in great detail, maybe even multiple times in multiple work sessions before they get over here. So as I've done the entire time since we started doing the work sessions, I truly encourage you to attend the work session if you want to get into the weeds and really hear the details of the discussions prior to coming over here. So please come to those if you would like to get more into the weeds. Now we'll move to board member reports, and I'll start with Mr. Scarce.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say this past Thursday, I had the privilege of being a keynote speaker for the Danville, Pittsylvania Cancer Association. It was a 21st Celebration of Life banquet they had. It was a great event, and I hope I can persuade people to go help them out. They do a lot of good things trying to get patients to their treatments, whether it's UVA, Duke, or wherever, and they do a lot for the community, so if you feel like giving a donation or giving some of your time to help drive, they only have a few drivers, and these guys will go out all day, for appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning at UVA, they'll stay all day. So they do a lot of good work for our people in the community, so if you can have some time, have some money, go out and support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scarce. Mr. Barber.
I've done.
Okay, Mr. Farmer.
I just want to take a second to say thank you to all the men and women, the volunteers for our fire and EMS services. The county's going through a transition period right now. Just want to recognize all their hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Mr. Blackstock.
I have two things. One, this board was instrumental in helping Daniel Lanier and Aaron, his wife, get the permits together and guide them in helping their small business, and they conducted a rodeo Friday and Saturday night in the Grit community, which small business is the backbone of this country, and to see somebody young like that with that enthusiasm and willing to risk their own money to make things happen. It was a wonderful event. It was hot. I attended Saturday night after working in the hayfield, but I'm not a rodeo person, but I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It was good, clean fun. It was right in their community. I didn't have to drive to Gretna Alphabus for it, right up to Grit, so that was great. The second thing that I would like to point out is it's a serious matter, but I'm proud of the law enforcement officials from the federal, state, and local level. Sheriff, you're sitting in here tonight, but recently y'all made a big announcement with several, I think 18 indictments in this particular press conference. But whenever local officials work with state and federal officials and coming together to help remedy the problems that drugs, including some of the things we talked about earlier tonight, opioids and all that stuff, and gangs, and it's a dangerous business. And we don't pay that much, and it's risky business. And I want to publicly say from the board, thank you, Sheriff, to the men and women that work for you, the state officials and the federal officials. Good job.
Mr. Davis.
Yes, sir. I want to thank Tyler Jarrett, that almost went unnoticed. In fact, he did go unnoticed from the school board and from the school situation. Really wasn't recognized from the schools, from what I've gathered, and I am thankful that we had the opportunity to recognize him. That gentleman has done an extremely outstanding job, athletic-wise, academically wise, being accepted in Cornell, New York City. That's not something that's really a slack operation. We want to thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good work. If I can be of an assistance to you in the future, call me anytime, because your daddy knows me. And I want to thank him, and I thank the parents that have done a great job with him. They won't even let him date another girl, and I've tried to get him a girlfriend, but nevertheless, they won't even let him date. Trying to keep his mind focused, but my hats off to the family. And I also want to thank the sheriff. In that announcement, I got an opportunity to visit and watch. The only thing was, I did ask him, what did he do? And he was ready to escort me out in handcuffs, but he wouldn't tell me what they did. But I do want to thank the sheriff for what you guys did. I appreciate what you guys mean to us in our county, as well as I reiterate for what Mr. Farmer said with our EMS personnel. I thank them for stepping up to the plate in our position where we're at now. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I have a small comment that also relates to fire rescue and EMS. I'm sure pretty much all of us and our extended families at one point or another have had to have those folk come to see about us. And I'm concerned that there is nowhere near enough minority community participation in fire rescue and EMS. And particularly with Mr. Smith, I would like to go on record as being willing to get together with you and those that work in that capacity to see what we can do about definitely helping to stimulate and bring about a greater minority community participation in those areas.
Thanks, Dr. Miller. That's great leadership right there. Mr. Slim, get with us. I'd like to also compliment and congratulate the Jarrett family. It's a great accomplishment. The accolades are tremendous. Glad to have you all here tonight. From personal experience, Mr. Jarrett, take a lot of tissues when you drop him off at Cornell. I'm just telling you, you have to be prepared. She's gonna cry all the way home, so just be prepared. But good luck, good luck. Also want to recognize Chatham High School, won a regional championship, went off and made a good display in the state championship, came up a little short, but if you look at their team, they're full of young talent, and they certainly have a bright future. So we'll be looking for the state title next year. Also want to take an opportunity, it's already been done and been done very eloquently by the board, to thank Sheriff Taylor. I happened to have the pleasure of attending the press conference. I don't know that I've seen as many black smoked out windows and tags, SUVs, and ever in the city of Danville before. So certainly those federal and state folks were well represented. And for the public, if you didn't read it in the paper, these were federal indictments, and They're very difficult to get to that level. This has been an ongoing operation. I think they said for 12, 15 months during the press conference. It just shows what can be accomplished when folks work together. Sheriff, we really appreciate all of your efforts in working with our joining community. We hope this will, and we know it will, it can only help all areas of our life and quality of life for our region, economic development, the whole 9 yards. So please pass our appreciation on to your entire staff and department. You all do a great job and certainly don't get enough praise for it. But we appreciate you, and we certainly rest a lot better having you all. We know you're out there and looking out for us. So thank you all very much. County Administrator's Report. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 items. I will give you a slight update on things going on in our emergency management services, our rescue squads. As you know, we have engaged our volunteers to service us on an interim basis for backup service, and they're doing a great job, being led by Captain Scotty Adams and Chief Dean Fowler. Those 2 gentlemen are leading 24-hour backup coverage in the county right now as we work to come up with a more permanent solution. The next step in that permanent solution is accepting bids from private providers to provide that service. Those bids actually did come in today. It's premature for me to disclose the details because we've not had a chance to review those. But we will, in the coming 45 days or so, be bringing a firm recommendation to the Fire and Rescue Policy Committee to talk about how we solve this problem long term. And as you know, in just the first 18 months of my tenure here, this is the 3rd time we've had to deal with this. So hopefully, because our volunteers are giving us some breathing room, we're going to be able to make some good decisions in the coming months about the long-term provision of emergency medical services. The other thing I'll tell you is our #1 priority right now is meeting the citizens' expectations and demands around solid waste, around our collection system, around our disposal. And you heard a lot of things this afternoon as well as this evening regarding the efforts that we're taking on the staff level to make sure this is a smooth process, and that a year from now our citizens are extremely pleased at the improvements we've made toward the convenience and cost containment of collecting solid waste. For example, this is so important to us. There's probably 18 different employees, including Sheriff Taylor, the Commonwealth's attorney, people from all disciplines of our organization assisting in 4 different committees to make sure that we cover every important portion of this service rollout. We think it's going to be something that this board will be proud of and our citizens will be happy with. And if we keep doing what we're doing, I think what we're going to discover maybe 2 years from now is that we are going to be able to look at our citizens and say, not only do we have a great landfill, a great collection service, and that we've figured out the most efficient ways to operate, that one day we're going to be able to reduce the cost of this annual solid waste fee. I don't have any doubt about that at all. If we keep doing what we're doing now, we keep on our plan of being able to offset our citizens' costs with out-of-county costs, I think our citizens will be very proud of where we end up in a couple of years. And I appreciate the patience that the citizens are showing as well as the Board of Supervisors, and we will keep you abreast weekly on our activities in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, do you have anything, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we enter into closed session to discuss consideration of interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, legal authority, Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1, subject matter county administrator, purpose, performance evaluation.
Do I have a second?
So,
Motion made by Mr. Blackstock, second by Mr. Barber. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes?
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that they went into closed session for only lawful matters as identified in the motion. Go into closed session if any member of the Board of Supervisors believes that they've deviated from the principles of closed session, please so state now, and it shall be entered into the minutes. Kelly, can you do a roll call, or do you want me to do it? How about Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Chairman Warren?
Yes, sir. With no other business to come before this board tonight, I declare the meeting adjourned.